Thank you everyone for staying and watching the film. I hope you enjoyed it and have many questions. I am now waiting to introduce the director and associate programmer, Agnes, so they can have a conversation and then you are able to also ask them a few questions. Just give us a second. And while we're waiting, I can just point out slido.com and the code over there to ask them questions. Agnes and Vladimir Leon, welcome to Sheffield DocFest and to our cinema that you are unfortunately not able to be here. Very sorry, but we're so happy for you to join us virtually. Thank you so much. We've seen your film now, and we're looking forward to the conversation you will have. And then I will come back with some audience questions later on. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Mita. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone in Sheffield and welcome Vladimir Leon. Very happy to meet you finally. I would like maybe to introduce some context before asking the first question. Obviously, we are dealing here with a complex family story, which deals also with the big history. And I just wanted to say that you and your brother Pierre, who is also a filmmaker, you did already in 2004, if I may remember well, a film about your father already called Nissim Dimax. And your father was a correspondent of the L'Humanité, the French newspaper from the Communist Party in Moscow. And both of you, Vladimir and Pierre, you were born in Moscow. Not the same year. That's each one of you have a story. I wanted maybe to ask. We can see when we look at the film that obviously this project comes from a long time ago. But when did you really? How did you decide to build this particular one? This film? Did you write a script, or what was the process? I mean, because at one moment there is a big flashback with your mother, but what was the process of this journey?
Yes, hello from Paris. Thank you, Agnes, for this question. Yes, it was quite a long process indeed. The first film you mentioned, we did with my brother Pierre about our father was, yes, now some 15 years ago. Then progressively, yes, the idea of maybe making something about my Russian family, the idea came. There was, of course, a kind of written project that existed, also to find some money. There was a first money that was found some 10 years ago. And this is how I could make the first shooting with my mother. And at that time, the project was slightly different. In fact, I didn't want to appear in it. It was just my brother who was investigating. But after my mother died a few years ago, I thought, well, now I have to be in the film and we have to make that travel together with my brother. So, in fact, the material I filmed some years ago appeared to be quite useful to give maybe some kind of feeling of that time passing by, and also the footage that I use at the end of the film of my grandmother that I filmed even before I thought my Dear Spies would ever exist, which was something I filmed in Moscow when I was there visiting her. But already I think somewhere probably in my mind there was an idea that all this story could be told with a film. Even maybe it was quite unconscious first, but I suppose that even the way I was quite surprised when we decided to edit that interview with my grandmother. So that was filmed, yes, some kind of 30 years ago or something. That how close it was in a way to the actual film, and even in a way of staging things a little bit, and of considering people who are appearing, of course, like as my grandmother or my brother or my mother, but at the same time as kind of characters of a kind of spy story.
And obviously, the two main characters conducting this investigation are you and your brother. They are the character of the story. And as in every good spy or family story, there is this suitcase, which is like a metaphor, but also a real suitcase, no?
Yeah. It is absolutely a real suitcase, and it's really true that I decided to reopen it a few years after, some 2 years after our mother died, and I really didn't know exactly what was in it. And for instance, when my brother Pierre discovers that there is a letter where my grandma is mentioning Efron, Marina Tsvetaev's husband, who obviously was working for the secret service, the intelligence, Russian intelligence, Soviet intelligence. It is true that he's really surprised. Pierre had never seen that before. So in fact, yes, the suitcase was true. The fact that we discover all the documents in real time is true, even though sometimes everything looks fake.
And this suitcase appears on a photo that you found also during the investigation of Pierre when he was a little boy. Is the same suitcase, really?
Well, at least it is what Pierre says, so I should believe him. He's my elder brother.
But what you are telling about the time is very important, because I think this is what constructs the film. We are going on a journey with you, and this journey is an investigation, and we are discovering or not discovering things at the same time as you, as the spectator.
Yeah, I think this was quite an early principle of the film, both in thinking about it, but also in the way we decided to edit it. It was really never to really know more than the audience, or at least we were, as we opened that suitcase in real time, the chronology of our investigation is 100% true. I mean, but I think if we would have, at least when we were editing the film with the editor, I think if we would have decided to follow some other principle, probably in a way we could have made some moments more, I don't know, catchy, or playing with some kind of suspense, or whereas here we really decided to preserve that time that we spent there in Russia, that sometimes could seem quite long, where sometimes the people we met brought some really deceiving moments, like that last historian close to the Russian FSB, and who really told us, yes, you know, maybe if there were agents, it was very small ones, and probably they were not. So if you really want to build something stronger in terms of drama, you should not put such a thing at the very end of the film, where everybody can only be disappointed in a way. But it's really what we experienced during our journey there. And I really wanted to keep that real, whereas some images from the past, like this interview with my grandmother, or that interview with my mother, or even the reading of the diary of my mother by a kind of fiction character, we don't really know who is she, was a way maybe to balance the moments of the present that we were describing, that I am describing in the film.
Mita, do we have questions or shall I continue?
Sorry, just coming back. We do have some questions.
Okay.
So I'll go. I just want to remind the audience that you can ask them. This is one time not to be shy because nobody knows who's asking them. But we have some here. So the first one is, I'm just going to read them as they came and verbatim. Did the process of making this film change you or your relationship with your brother?
Wow, what a question. I think in a way it changed us and it didn't change us, like like very often things in life. Yeah, I think it changed. At least it changed for sure my relation to the history of my grandparents. Suddenly, I could feel that a kind of glorious story of people loving the Soviet Union, going back there to face a kind of revolutionary dream. Definitely that was not the case, and that they lived something much more difficult. Of course, they were not jailed, they were not put in a camp, but at the same time, there was a violence, and the surprise was to discover how much, in a way, they protected us, in a way. We were protected from that story. And I think it changed a little bit also the relation with my brother, because as we were together put in that strange situation, the fact that we didn't react exactly the same to the various situations we faced was an interesting way to meet each other again and to get closer at some point. And it's true, again, we don't fake with that moments of loneliness with vodka in totally filthy rooms and awful places. We sometimes spend nights in. So yes, we experienced something quite strong. And has it changed? Yes, maybe and maybe not, because it's many things, as usual, it's many things that in fact we know, but we don't know that we know them. And that's why also a film sometimes can help seeing this better.
Thank you. Mita, another one?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, about your relationship with your brother. The scene, I think, in the hotel really, really struck me. I think it was really special to watch as well. There are a lot of interviews in the film. Did you consider how to design these scenes to make it not too repetitive or boring when shooting?
To me, maybe in contradiction to a certain taste that is now predominant, I'm not afraid of interviews in that sense that it is a way to enter sometimes in contact with people. When we were talking to this historian or a lady at the archive or some other people we met, although it's a very formal way to first have a kind of conversation, I always think it can bring more, especially because we are not making an interview for the radio or in a book, but we can see the people, the environment, how they react, how they watch, how they smile, or how they almost cry. And I always think also that it can be part of cinema to use this capacity of recording words and talks and the way people talk. And the fact that sometimes there can be, you used the word boring, something repetitive about it. to me was also very close to what we were experiencing, and also maybe what I think about history, that sometimes it has to do also with things that are repeated, but are not always telling exactly the same thing. And also that history is not necessarily something where the explanations or what people say are just the reality. The reality is, to me, altogether. I mean, those interviews and the context and how we get to them and how people talk differently. With that, I have always the impression that I may understand a little bit better something of the past and also something of the present, which was so important in the film, to be in Russia today. So, of course, even when people are talking about the past, about the purges, about the Stalinist regime, about the Soviet days, they were at the same time talking today. And the connections that we could feel in the film between that past and what we could experience in the present day were very, very strong. And particularly the fact that fear was back as a political tool today in Russia. That's why also I wanted to have people speak maybe the way they wanted, and even if sometimes we made the choice to make it long and not just based on the information that would be relevant, but more than that, was something that had to do with the position of being here, listening to people, and try to use cinema as a way of recording real lives of people who are facing today, I think, a quite violent situation in terms of fear of speaking freely.
Thank you very much. We have one more question, and then I'll pass it back to you, Agnes. Sorry, give me 1 second. So you talked about showcasing the film chronologically, but was there any part about your experience or research that you left out, and why?
Yeah, well, it's of course we did. Maybe, and this is in a way to go on with what I just said. During that conversation that maybe you remember in that workshop with artists and intellectuals today in Moscow, when we start talking about the repression, the purges of the 30s, and then we come back to present days. At some point, we came to discuss about the Pussy Riots that activists, artists were in prison. And in the first editing, I really wanted to put some images of that, the action the girls, the Pussy Riots did in Moscow, in a cathedral, where they made a kind of punk rock music show, which was very provocative and very strong, and after which they were arrested. And then I have promised to the people in Russia who participated in the film to show them the editing so that they won't have any problems. And one of the participants told me, you should not put this excerpt of the Pussy Riots in the cathedral. Well, first I was a little bit surprised. I said, why is it so? Oh, why you are putting this? You know, it has nothing to do with your film. You are talking about the past. Why you should put this? And of course I responded, but you brought the subject in the conversation because we were talking about activists in Russia today and in the field of art. And then I understood that that person was just really scared to be associated, even through a film made by a Frenchman, and that so far has never been screened in Russia. She was still afraid that those little minutes of the Pussy Riots in the cathedral being too close to her would be a danger and could jeopardize her work and a career and so on. So yes, there were some choices where things had to be removed just for the safety of people. And other things were removed just because the film was already quite long, and I think we feel enough the feeling of time in this film without making a film of 5 or 6 hours.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to point out that the history, of course, led to present history, but we just spoke about this moment with the artist in Moscow, which is really strong, and where we can feel that the fear is there again. And I think that since you shot the film, is worse and worse. I mean, the situation now, what we are seeing, what just happened in Belarus, what's happening in Ukraine, and what's happening in Russia is even worse every time. Did you already show the film in Russia, or are you going to?
Well, so far, no. Although I, of course, sent it to all the Russian participants. There could be a possibility, but so far it's not totally official. And besides, as you know, even in festivals today in Russia, sometimes it's not so easy to show films. Although I've never felt my film as a very violent political anti-Russian film, but still today you don't know what you can show or what you can't. So yes, I would be very happy to perform the film in Russia, because it could be an occasion for some other discussions, for some other ways to listen to what people, yes, have to say. And I would be curious to know how they react to such a history and such a story that, yes, deals also with that Soviet past, which is even today sometimes quite complicated to talk about now in Russia.
Yes. Mita, you tell us if we have more time, or?
I'm afraid you don't. Sorry. But so is there anything else you would like to say? Just to wrap up? And then Vladimir, anything?
Yeah, well, it's difficult because it's so strange to be in that little frame without seeing you and without being able to talk with you after the screening in a less formal way, and to see what of all this story was understood and perceived, and so this is a little bit frustrating, but still I'm very happy that the film could be screened today in Sheffield, and yes, it's the most important, although a little bit frustrating not to be with you and discuss it later on, and maybe with a vodka.
With a vodka, yes. Anyway, thank you very much to join this conversation online. I'm also frustrated not to be in a cinema with you, but it will come hopefully for your next film, because I'm sure you have already a project.
Yes, also quite political, but more about Italy, and yes, but yes, political, and I hope, yes, I'll be back, and next time in real life.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mita.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope to meet you in person soon. Thank you.
Thank you.